Okay, hello. Welcome to this. Welcome to the program. Is what I meant to say there. Hope you're having a wonderful afternoon. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about some history of a park here and some interesting historic location here in Marathon County. Yeah, so we are going to get started in just a minute here. I'm trying starting a little later. We don't necessarily need as much time, I think, for people to join. I'm just going to make sure that the audio is looking all right. Mute myself there. Okay. I think we're doing all right. Yeah, so we're going to be talking. Welcome to History Chats. We're going to be talking this month about it is Historic Preservation Month, so we are going to be celebrating that a little bit by talking about the some historic landmarks in our communities. And we're going to start with one such place here at the Dells of the Eau Claire. I guess just very briefly here, just because it's coming up real quick, I want to tell you about if you've been following our History Speak series. So we are getting started again. We have another one coming up in just a couple weeks here on May 22nd. Let me make sure I have the right date. 21st. I said 22nd, meant 21st. There you go. You can see that. Marshfield is actually celebrating 150 years since its founding. And so we're going to have one of our neighbors here, and expert on the Marshfield history, Don, is going to, Schnitzler, he's going to be coming and talking about the history of Marshfield. And again, that'll be an in-person program coming up just in a few weeks here on a Saturday. And of course, I'll be recording it, so we'll have the recording out for people to watch if you can't make it in, but it'll be a great program. So look forward to that. I don't think we just got the press release out this morning, I think, so might not have heard about it. I want to make sure that you got a chance to know about it. All right. But I think with that, we'll just jump right in. As always, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, whatever, feel free to drop those in the comment section, the chat section, whatever, if you're watching live. Or I guess if you're not, hey, I guess I get notifications on that too. But yeah, we're going to be talking today about the Dells of the Eau Claire, which is a really interesting, don't need the headphones now. Really interesting history here. If you've never, many of you probably have been out to the Dells. It's a great park, but there's a much larger history that speaks to, why this is something that's important. It was, as we will see, added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2016. And it's a very, very good candidate for that. So, yeah, let's jump into it. I think the first thing that needs to be clarified is some terminology here. Actually, first, I figured, hey, I'm going to make a little table of contents here, because why not? Here's what we're going to be doing. Don't do that often. Anyway, terminology. So what is a dell? Right? It's not this. It's not something that we use very often in the modern discourse. It's a place name that just gets thrown in when we're looking for, a place on a map, but we don't really have a, what is a dell? Well, as it turns out, if you're not familiar, and it's fair, dell actually is it comes from the Old English word, going back there, a dale or dale. So consequently, it's not this guy either. Yeah. It actually it ends up meaning a secluded hollow, a little place to get away from the world. And usually there's a context here that it's specifically about a wooded valley. So a little place, like, for example, the background here, this is not in Marathon County. This is actually the Wisconsin Dells, a famous location here. But like the one in Marathon County, these dells are specifically sort of a secluded little place, a place to get away. Maybe it's not some place that's heavily traveled. It's just a nice opportunity to connect with nature and get away from the world. And so, not the best search engine optimization, SEO there. The words Wisconsin and Dells and Eau Claire even are a little problematic sometimes if you're just trying to search it for in Google or something. And it gets confusing is the other part of that, I suppose, if you're not familiar with the area. But that's what the Dells comes from. So there you go. So I figured let's take a little trip out there. I'm gonna open up Google Earth here. Let's go see where are the Dells. This is where I am currently. We're at the Woodson History Center in Wausau. It's a location here. But let's go out. And we're gonna orient north here so we can follow that. So here's Wausau. So Wausau area here. Of course, we are on the Wisconsin River. Now, you might think the Eau Claire Dells might have to do with something with, let's see, Eau Claire, right? Eau Claire out here. Big city in Wisconsin. Actually has not, it's similar in that they both come from the same root word, French for clear water. Eau is French for water, Claire, clear. But in fact, there's actually 3 Eau Claire rivers. We're going to be talking the one in Marathon County in central Wisconsin, the eastern one. And so it's a tributary of the Wisconsin. So if we follow this down to the Schofield Weston area, it's the flowage, and we can follow the river over. And it bends and turns. There's a northern and a southern branch here. I think we follow the northern, yeah. So you can follow it up. You can kind of see where the woods around the river if you can't see it specifically. And thankfully, Google Earth adds a nice little graphic there. And right here, this ends up going all the way kind of over to Anago if we want to continue following it. But I think right around here, uh-oh, did I get myself lost? Here we go. I figured I'd find it, so I didn't want to make a pin or anything. Let's try this again. Oh, there we go. So let's just keep going. Eventually, we get to the Dells, which is right in here. So if we zoom in, this is this picturesque view, little place to get away. This is a location that people knew. There are stories about the lumberjacks in the very early logging. They would go up this and bring logs down the Eau Claire River, and this was sort of a spot that they knew about. I'm sure the Native Americans stopped here and enjoyed this too. I didn't necessarily look too deeply into that, but that's the park. So when we talk about the Eau Claire Dells, it's a little secluded area. Eau Claire, where it's on the Eau Claire River. And it can be the Dells of the Eau Claire or at the Eau Claire. It's also fine to just say the Eau Claire Dells, just a terminology there. Although, again, if you put that into a search engine online, it might just bring up a Dells in the vicinity of Eau Claire, because that's how that works. But it is a place that people end up going. And by the turn of the century, with the start of recreation and, people are looking to get out for the day, people start to come here. It becomes a sort of well-known, not super well-known compared to some of the other, what it would become. But certainly, people are coming out. 1915, for example, here's just one of many little notes just saying in the Daily Herald, Record Herald, a party of young people autoed out to the Dells of the Eau Claire Sunday and spent the day. The weather was beautiful and the trip was much enjoyed. Automobiles are important in this, of course. By the time you have automobiles and the roads that allowed you to get around on the automobiles, it opens up a lot more. Having a park in your neighborhood is important, as a place to get away. But by the 19-teens, people are starting to travel a bit further away. You can get an automobile and you can go a little further. And as our world, the radius of how far you can travel in a day expands, as the roads get better, as the vehicles get better, it becomes more common for people to look for a day trip. Let's get out of town for a little bit. And so the Dells becomes an important place. And it also has it going for it that it's just a beautiful location. Here again from the Daily Herald, although this is interestingly them quoting the Anago Times quoting them. They just wanted to reinstate this. They really wanted a park here. So apparently the people in Anago are quoting them as saying, those who have visited the Dells know what a beautiful place it is and what wonderful possibilities it has for public park purposes. It has scenic beauty, such as few places in the state could boast. It is still in the natural state, but unless it is acquired soon, the hand of man, influenced by commercial gain, may strip it of the great advantage. It is to be hoped, therefore, that the people of Marathon County will not too long neglect the great opportunity that is still theirs and acquire it as early day as possible. The land on both sides of the Eau Claire for a sufficient distance to make a large park. This is 1922. By this point, the state had passed a law basically allowing for counties to create a county parks department, a commission, and that's what we did in 1920. The very first park in the system, of course, is Marathon Park, which is part and parcel with that. We'll talk about that actually in about 2 weeks when we talk about the fairgrounds, just coming up here. But for now, basically Marathon Park, and they start to look at the rest of the county and they say, what other places would make for good parks? And here you go. Here's a great park. People are already used to coming out here. It's not quite as in the same vein as other parks that are created around this time, like Athens and Unity and Elderon. Like these are existing communities. Cherokee, Gooding, even is kind of on the road between Mosinee and Wausau. This is a little bit further out of the way, but it's still a dang good park. And so, yeah, in 1924, they acquired the land and they end up creating a park. And this becomes one of the big parks that sort of the marquee parks, if you will, the pillars of the park system for many to this day, right? Now, people keep going out here, right? This is a postcard showing the wonderful water feature here and some views. But as you can see here, this is actually speaking to the other park. There's actually two parks that are created at Marathon or at the Dells, and as you can see, near Vogel's Park. Of course, Anawa here because it's kind of closer to Anawa, but let's talk about Vogel's. So if we look at a 1930 plat map here, so this shows in a couple years after the park is created, here's the town of Plover, which is where the Dells are in. We zoom in, you can see the river. So the Dells are right in here, and yeah, in 1924 they create the park. So there's the Eau Claire Dells County Park. But if you look closely, the land surrounding this area is owned by a man named Charles C. Vogel. He's a banker. And I should say Vogel here, sometimes it's EL, sometimes it's just VOGL. I think VOGL seems to be more ubiquitous, which is what I'm using it, but either way. But yeah, he is a banker from Anawa, and he, in 1926, so 2 years after this county acquires the land and creates the park, he sees an opportunity. This is the high point of the, certainly a golden age maybe of resorts, as they would say. And so he creates a nightclub, a supper club, a little resort place on the river, recognizing that there's a lot of beauty all over that area, and kind of chaining on the idea that the county is going to be developing this park, and so having a nice location. Anawa, it's still a bit further out of the way, into the Dells. So if you can also offer, add extra attraction to get people out there, all the better. I believe this is the second building that was built. There was a first one. Actually, I'm not sure. One of them was built in 1926, 27, 28, somewhere late 20s. And then they end up burning down, actually. And so in the 30s, in 1933, I think that burns down. And so they rebuild it. So you'll see slightly different versions of this building. But this is the clubhouse. It's a great place. You got, a dining room. You don't have to just bring a picnic basket and make your own food. You can just go out to the Dells and you can stop at Vogel's and get a good meal. And also while you're there, see a show. This is one of the hot spots, the nightclubs in the 1930s. This is where all the good bands played. Going back to, this is like from the early years, 26, 28. Got Don Rasmussen and his orchestra. And this is the place that many of the groups that were coming through, like if you wanted good music, and it also helps that it's far enough out that you're not going to get people just randomly walking in the door. You got to have a certain level of wealth, I guess, in that sense, to own a car to drive out there. But if you could hitch a ride out there, it's good times. It also helped that it was far enough away that during the height of Prohibition, I don't think I'm speaking out of school if I just kind of give this away. Let's just say, if you wanted to have a drink at a time when that was illegal, there's a lot of people vacationing from Chicago up here at Vogel's Park in the 30s. Read into that what you will. Yeah. So got nightclub and also other stuff as well. I should say later, after World War II, the club and the park get bought out by, I think there's 2 or 3 people that end up owning it over the years. But it does change its name from Vogel's to the Normandy Club. So some people might remember the Normandy Club, or you hear about it. It's the same place. But yeah, in the 30s, it's all great, except in the 1940s, things kind of run into some problems. And particularly during World War II, there's gas rationing, and suddenly the idea of driving out to a park for entertainment is a bit extravagant, and we can't do that. So yeah, hard times during the 1940s. After the war, they bring it back again, but it had kind of lost the moment, lost the splendor a little bit, although it does continue to go for many, many years. But it wasn't just about the nightclub. It wasn't just about that. There was also, the Vogels developed a nice bathing beach. So here you can see the fun water features here to play. There's a little, I think they had a little marina, maybe with a boat or two that you could bring out. And of course, big attraction here. I don't know if you can make this out, but on the right here, this is a water slide. And so this is a postcard from about late 20s, early 30s. And apparently people went out to just watch kids go down the water slide. And this is back when water slide meant like a toboggan, like you got onto like a sled type deal with like metal rails, and then they got stuck into a slide that then, you slid down, and then you skated across the water for a little bit. So a little different than modern water slides, but still apparently a lot of fun to watch. I mean, this is all possible in large part because, I should say, after okay. I moved my slides around here. That's all right. Bathing beach. So the bathing beach ends up becoming the modern bathing beach. And after the 1960s, by this point, they're looking to maybe sell the land. It's not quite the attraction that it was before. I think there was another fire in 66 that destroyed the building itself. And so by the end of the 1960s, in 1968, 69, the county acquires that land and reworks it to be part of the expansion of the park. So if we look at the park map today, you can see you got the northern part here. And so that bathing beach, actually here, we can go back to Google Earth. I brought it up here. So down here, you got the Palisades, you got the rock features. It's part of the park. And then up here, you've got the bathing beach. And this is where Vogel's Park used to be. So that's where that comes in. Now, this is all possible in large part because the Vogels actually invested in a dam. And this dam kind of held back enough of the water and kind of relaxed the water a little bit as it went through to create a nice little beach, which is something that you can still see today. Of course, it's been maintained over the years and changed a bit. Now they've added this nice walkway over the top of it. But it is still there, and you can still go back to the days. And if you ever go out there, you can take a look at the dam. That's basically what's left of the Vogel's Park way back there. But that's that connection to the early origins there. And yeah, people end up making the trip out throughout this period. Of course, they're going and they're enjoying the Vogel's Park, but many people also just go out to enjoy the dells, as you can see here. Someone with their finger on the side there, I think. Yeah, great picture. This also brings up, okay, now what's happening at the park, right? You got the Vogel's amusement park, but what's about the county park? Because that's also going through some changes in the 1930s, particularly with the Conservation Corps. In those early years of, they acquired the park in 24, opened up in 24, 25. There's also sort of a general sense of like the parks department is a little overtaxed. They opened like 6 new parks within the span of 5-10 years. And so, they don't necessarily develop it, but the Civilian Conservation Corps getting started. For those not familiar, President Roosevelt is elected, FDR, during the Great Depression, and his, way to get out of this is let's put people back to work. And all these unemployed young men all over the country, let's put them to work. Let's, make them build bridges and stuff, and dig ditches and make roads and all sorts of other stuff. Much larger story here, of course. And I think we've talked about this in the past. So, yeah. But yeah, we had a Camp Rib Mountain. So there's a camp in Rib Mountain. Here's the overview of the camp. And they did a bunch of stuff. They did a lot of work on Rib Mountain, getting that started as a state park, building that road up. And there was a road before, but now it gets kind of more formalized as a good road. And they also built the chalet at the ski hill, kind of paving the way for that. But they also very quickly get put to use at the Dells, as well as a couple other parks as well. Mostly the Dells, they don't really, like the plan was in the 40s to have them, if it continued, develop the big old plain. They started to do some work there. But the Dells is the one that benefits probably the most here. So here you can see them, some CCC workers doing some work there. Here's another one. Now, one of the things that if you've been to the park, you probably notice and remember that there's a lot of stonework. And some of that goes back to the CCC years. I don't know how much of it though. So like this is kind of an iffy. This picture is from later, but not too much later, I don't think. But this area, that walkway down, and then of course you got the overlook there. I think this was probably later. I think this is maybe the 60s or 70s they put this in, but it's certainly trying to emulate the style. And I could be wrong about that. I've seen pictures of them working on it. I don't know if they're renovating it or expanding it. But from what I can tell in the pictures from the 30s, 40s, 50s, you don't really see this overlook. Just a little aside there, I guess. What they did do is a bunch of other stuff. And one of the big things, just to kind of jump to the end, I guess, is the shelter. The shelter actually gets started in 1940, 41. I think 41, yeah. And so they get a good chunk of the stuff done. But then World War II breaks out. And suddenly the unemployed young men in this country have better stuff to do than, build a shelter at a park in Wisconsin. And so as they enter the military service and the CCC project gets shut down, the Parks Department is kind of left with an unfortunate situation. This is from a report to the county board showing the half-built, half-completed park. By the end of 1942, the CCC abandoned it. And then they had, unfortunately, it's a war year, maybe not quite as much. Oh, sorry, my camera there froze just a second. I'm not sure if that came through. There we go. War years, that's a little rough. So they end up having to basically spend all of their budget in 1942 for the year just to complete the shelter, which they do. And it's a beautiful shelter that you can go and enjoy to this day. But the other big project that they did at the Dells is the bridge. Well, one of the bridges. This is the footbridge. So you can see these pictures from the CCC guys working on it. But ultimately, this is what they end up building. This is from the 80s, I think, this picture, but you can get a sense of the bridge, the high bridge, right? If we go back to here, so you got the CCC puts a lot of trails, putting the trails together, which you can't really see here because they're under the trees, but it crosses over here at the footbridge, or the high bridge is the other word that they use for it. And it's still around today, right? So just to give you a sense of how important they were, when asked to speak to the influence of the CCC and the WP, the other the alphabet organizations that under the New Deal, the president of the Parks Commission at this point, John Dittenbrenner, one of the old original members from back in the day, he said, look, we could never have built that footbridge at the Eau Claire Dells today. It would have cost us $500,000 today. So having the CCC really jump-started a lot of the park projects, including this one. And it's still there today. There's obviously some changes. They redid the railing a while ago and added a little bit more, shoring up the foundation here, which doesn't quite match, but at least the original is still there, and it's still an interesting bridge to go walk along. If you haven't ever gotten out there, and next time you're there, you should make a point of crossing it. It's pretty fun. Speaking of bridges, though, we should probably end by talking about the main bridge. So this is the bridge, County Highway or County Road Y. Well, here I'm using Google. Might as well continue with the maps here. So we got this road here. This is County Highway Y, and it crosses over at the Dells. This goes back to like the 1890s. By the turn of the century, there's already a road here. I don't know if this is the original one. I think this is probably done around that time to kind of shore it up. There's probably a wood bridge early on. But you got this metal bridge here, and this is kind of an important way to get across. This is what they used for the first 10 years-ish of the park. maybe not 10 years. In 1927, they replaced it, so it's actually not too long. But for all the people that went out there and just autoed out to the Dells, this is what they would have crossed. The problem here is it's not very wide. This is a one-lane road, and that's not ideal. So especially by the end of the 20s, we're starting to really see that automobiles are going to be really important. We need better roads, hopefully roads that can hold heavier things. And so they ended up building this, 1927. These pictures are from 2014, I think. Shelley Green took these for a state project of some sort. And you can see the 1927 by Fisher and Sons. And it's just beautiful, nice bridge. Now, there's a little bit of controversy here because around this time, the highway department recognized this was going to be a problem. This bridge was maybe not up to code as we would want bridges in the future. But the problem is that it's part and parcel of the historic Eau Claire Dells. This is one of those structures that is very important to the heritage. And so what they ended up doing after some back and forth, they ended up having a compromise that led to them actually taking these stones, shearing them, and then attaching them to the side of a modern bridge, as you can see them doing here, to kind of keep the feel and the compromise of having a structurally sound bridge. And you can see the difference here. This is clearly, if you're driving over it, it doesn't feel like it's a bridge in 1927. But on the outside, looking the view of it, very much feels very similar to the original bridge, the one in 1927. So, and that's kind of part and parcel with how historic preservation works sometimes. Sometimes bridges are going to need to be replaced, and it's not cost efficient to save every stone and rebuild it in a way that's going to be feasible. So you find compromises. You find ways to keep the character and keep the exterior in some ways, some buildings or things like that. It's not ideal. Ideally, all of the great buildings would never get old and never need to be replaced. But sometimes you have to find creative ways to move forward, which is what we did here. So that brings us to the National Register of Historic Places. Now, if you're not familiar, in 1966, and I'm just going to bring up the link here. In 1966, they created the National Register. It's through the National Park Service, and it actually has a listing. So you submit your proposal, and if they judge that proposal of a building or a property or a district, in this case, it's a bunch of different structures. They will say yeah, and then it'll be put on this National Register, which entitles it to be sort of recognized as a landmark in the history of the United States, and specifically in this case, some local things. So this is the link here. Unfortunately, they seem to have redone their site recently, and so this link no longer works. But it is still there. You can go to their they have a database here, so you can search, and so that's what I did down here. Put Marathon County. You can see all of the different historic landmarks the register has, and let's see here. I know I passed it here. Dells of the Eau Claire. So yeah, if we look over in 2016, it was accepted. Some of these have a nice a PDF that you can open to show the actual thing. Unfortunately, that hasn't been added for the Dells, but still pretty cool. So it is recognized. It is a part of our history. It's a local landmark. It's not something that has national significance, but it's a great indicator of that, and so that's pretty cool. And that's going to be the theme for the next couple weeks. We're going to be talking about different places on the National Register. As I mentioned earlier in the program, I'm going to be doing the fairgrounds in about 2 weeks. But next week, we're going to talk about our newest landmark, which is actually a district. Like the Dells, it is not just one property, not one structure. It's a bunch of things that contribute to it. And sometimes when, for example, it's Highland Park, right? I shouldn't beat around the bush. You can read. So Highland Park in Wausau, it's a neighborhood, and it has a lot of great history, a lot of the buildings that are still there. And next week, we're going to have Gary who's going to come back and tell us about how this came to be, what is the history of this neighborhood, and take a virtual sort of walking tour to see what are the buildings that are there and why do they together lead to something that needs to be recognized and is recognized by the National Register, as well as locally. There's a city of Wausau has some landmarks in the state as well. So we'll get into that next week. Hopefully you come back for that. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the program. It was a fun one put together. Um, I am going to just put up let's see. So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning here. Yeah, sure. Why not? Um, I'm just going to check to see if there's any comments or questions here. It's all right if there isn't. While I'm checking, in case anybody's frantically typing to get one in, I'll just remind you again, coming up in a little over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks. So not this weekend, but 2 from it on the 21st. We'll have our next History Speaks lecture. Our guest speaker, Don Schnitzler, is going to be coming up from Marshfield to tell us about their history. Wausau is celebrating 150 years as a city, and Marshfield is as a community as well. It's kind of interesting. Also, Eau Claire is as a city. There's a number of places across Wisconsin that 1872 was an important year. So, but we'll hear about our neighbor, Marshfield, in many ways a very big part of our collective community in Marathon County, as is one of those communities that was right down the road from us. So hopefully come and join us for that. All right. I'm not seeing anything here. I'll give it one more refresh, but if that's all right. And cool. Thanks for watching. Thanks if you made it this far. Appreciate you. And hopefully you enjoyed the program and learned a little bit about the Dells and more. Again, come back next week for a little different take of more of a walking tour type feel, but that'll be a good one too, and learn about the recent addition of the Highland Park Boulevard. No, Highland Park neighborhood, including the boulevard. Anyway, I'm gonna call it there. Have a wonderful afternoon or whatever it is when you're watching this. If you're watching it later, we'll see you next time.